You're the CEO and co-founder of the company, and launched with a partner. Tell us what it was like. Did you know going into a partnership, launching something? Why did you choose that versus going alone? And I'll ask more questions later.
It's a great question. And I think if I were to, the number one thing I tell people who ask for my advice when they're heading into a startup is find a partner, and make sure it's somebody that you trust and that you've known a while. A lot of people sort of jump into things with somebody who has a similar idea and then they realize it's not the right person. Luckily, my co founder and I had worked together for about 15 years prior, at Vogue. And the reason being, I think, first and foremost, is just it's hard. Starting something new is really hard, both emotionally, physically, it's taxing, and there's a lot of ups and downs. And so you need a person who I think is going through the exact same thing as you are to really commiserate and to kind of help you through it. I think that was the biggest thing I did right, which was, really being able to lean on someone, in the trying times, because there are many of them when you're starting a business. So, I think there's a lot of people who will tell you, well, what about the economics? You're 50-50, and what if something happens? I think those are all things you'll figure out. But I think particularly for a mom, right, who has children they're raising, and sort of other obligations, you need a partner. You can't do it alone. And I think if you're a mom, everyone knows that you need help, right? You can't do this alone. And I think that's the fair for starting your own business as well.
I have to ask, because as somebody who spent a fair bit of her career as a consultant helping partnerships navigate the equivalent of a divorce and the equivalent of marriage therapy. What did you, in picking somebody that you had worked with for 15 years, obviously you knew them and you knew their strengths and you understood what you had to offer versus what they had to offer. But what would you give as advice to somebody considering a partnership, saying, yes, I want to go into this, but I'm not really sure what to be looking for? Because often people, as you said earlier, dive in based on a similar interest, but perhaps their set of skills is exactly the same, and that comes with problems or whatever. What's your advice for that?
No, I think work ethic is really key. I think when someone is always up to the task, is going to put in the same amount that you're putting in, that I think is the most important, because I think there's just there's a lot of people who have different ideas of what it means to start something, right? Some people just want to invest and sort of be a cheerleader on the sidelines. But when you're an actual founder and a meaningful part of the business, you're doing the work, right? You're not just conceiving of it. And so I think that's a big piece of it, is really making sure that you're aligned in kind of the scope of work that you're both willing, and the amount of time that you're both willing to put into it. And I think obviously you should, it's like a marriage, right? You should talk about the finances. You should talk about the equity. All those things are important conversations to have up front, because it gets messy, it gets messy. And so I think as long as you're super transparent about those things going into it, and the person, like I really do believe you have to know the person, because there's just a lot that comes out when you're under the gun. Then I think it's a good decision.